They smirked the moment he stepped inside. A wiry 63-year-old man, in a faded army jacket and worn-out boots, asking to run one of the toughest tactical courses in the country, at Pine Ridge Tactical near Abilene, Texas. No one said it aloud, but the doubt was loud in their eyes. Jerome Winslow didn't match their image of strength, let alone a SEAL-level shooter. The heat outside clung to his back as he walked in, each step quiet and unshaken. He moved with the stillness of someone who didn't need to explain himself. Colonel Halverson, a grizzled ex-Marine behind the desk, didn't even try to hide. His suspicion gave him lane 6 with a smirk that said, "This'll be funny." Around the lobby, younger guys whispered and chuckled, wondering if Jerome even knew how to load a modern rifle. But Jerome wasn't there to prove anything to them. He was there to remind himself of something deeper, something forged and real. Sand, real blood, and real war. When the buzzer rang, it began with 2 clean shots in under 2 seconds. Targets dropped with the rhythm of decades-old muscle memory, not flashy, but flawless. The smirks faded, the whispers stopped. He reloaded, smoothly, calmly, each movement born from years of discipline, not ego. One by one, targets fell, left to right, wide to narrow, standing, moving, none survived. The crowd near the glass thickened. Even the instructors, once uninterested, leaned in. Gwen, the range's assistant manager, stared at the numbers. Blinking on the leaderboard, Jerome wasn't just holding pace, he was setting it. Faster than SEAL Phase 2 standards, cleaner than anyone in recent memory. Halverson stood still, arms crossed, jaw tight, unable to speak, but burning inside. This wasn't just another vet with a chip on his shoulder. This was a ghost from a battlefield the rest of them had only seen in history books. Each shot spoke not of glory, but of grit. Jerome wasn't performing. He was remembering. Every round echoed like a memory, every breath like a lesson earned in silence. And just before the final shot, the room held its breath. The same mouths that laughed now frozen, watching a man who had walked in alone leave behind the sound of his last bullet and the silence of every person who had doubted him. She didn't have to spell it out. Her voice already said what her lips didn't. "You got him all wrong. Try again," she said gently. "You don't know the name Jerome Winslow?" Colonel Halverson blinked. "Should I?" She leaned closer. Fort Huachuca, late 90s, taught advanced marksmanship. Special ops used to swear by him. A flicker of memory passed across Halverson's face, his jaw tightening. That was a long time ago. But as he moved toward the range window, watching Jerome through the glass, time didn't seem to matter. The older man moved with quiet precision, reloading with flawless control. No wasted energy, just a quiet intensity that filled every breath. He had walked in like a janitor, not saying a word because he didn't need to. Gwen stood beside. Halverson's eyes locked on Jerome's stance. "You think he's here to prove a point?" Halverson asked. "No," Gwen replied simply. "He came to remember." Inside the range, Jerome dropped to a knee, body squared, barrel steady, shot after shot, thudded into the center. The tracker lit up. Green, 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 no misses. A pair of younger shooters stood stunned nearby, whispers giving way to silence. "No way he's not military," one murmured. "He is," Gwen confirmed, "and better than you think." As the drill progressed, Jerome moved into the timed stage. 1 target per 3 seconds. Most blink? He didn't. Just calm, efficient. Destruction. Even Halverson had to acknowledge it silently, of course, but Gwen wasn't watching him anymore. "Sir, he's already running the speed course." Halverson blinked. "What?" Gwen pointed to the screen. On the range, Jerome blazed through the 6-target blitz, 5 seconds flat. It was the kind of challenge that left elite trainees sweating. Not him. He just matched the SEAL record, Gwen whispered. Halverson tried to downplay it. "That leaderboard's outdated. Last week you said it was exact," she countered. He didn't reply. Jerome, meanwhile, stepped back calmly. No sweat, no celebration, just quiet recollection. He entered the gear-up room, cooler, dimmer, where shooters tinkered with vests and drills. He laid the rifle down, began disassembling it. His hands moved with practiced care, as if the rifle were a memory more than a weapon. Across from him sat a broad man in a black Texas Rangers shirt, scar on his jaw. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" he asked. Jerome didn't look up. "Nowhere special." The man chuckled. "I've seen nowhere special. It doesn't shoot like that." "A pause, Army," Jerome finally said. "Taught recon back in Arizona." The Ranger's eyes narrowed. "Winslow?" Jerome gave a faint nod. "Yeah." A breath escaped. "The man's lungs? You trained us before Kosovo." "I still quote your line. Breathe through the fear." Jerome smiled faintly. "Didn't think anyone remembered that. Changed everything for me," the man said. They sat in silence until the Ranger leaned in. "You know Halverson's watching, right?" Saw his reflection. "Doesn't matter," Jerome said. "He's run this place like a personal boot camp for years. Doesn't think anyone outside the Corps has anything to teach." Jerome didn't flinch. "Everyone thinks they've seen the worst. Until they haven't. That's the truth." The Ranger nodded. "So why are you here?" "Not for applause," Jerome said. "Just muscle and memory." The door creaked open. Trey, the same cocky kid from before, walked in, suddenly sheepish. "Hey, Didn't mean what I said earlier, he stammered. Didn't think I could shoot. Jerome finished for him. Calm, not accusatory. Trey nodded. Ever lose someone because your shot was a heartbeat late? Jerome asked. Trey shook his head. Ever pull someone from a pit while bullets cracked around you? Again? No. Ever hold your breath for 12 hours in silence, knowing a cough would get your team killed? Trey swallowed hard. No, sir. Jerome softened. But you could learn, if you respect the craft. Not the image, the craft. That's how skill earns respect. And respect creates skill. Trey stood quietly, digesting every word. Just then, the PA buzzed. Shooter Winslow to the front desk. Jerome didn't flinch. Just finished cleaning the rifle, snapping it back together with steady hands. Delgado the ranger offered to come. Jerome declined. I've met men like him before. As he stepped into the hallway, Trey followed behind, quieter this time, like a student walking behind a teacher. The corridor smelled faintly, of rubber and gun oil. At the end stood Halverson, posture stiff, waiting. But Jerome didn't speed up. He walked with purpose, not urgency, like a man who had nothing left to prove to anyone, least of all to someone who'd already judged him wrong. Jerome walked calmly toward the range counter, clipboard in hand. But it wasn't just notes he was carrying. There was history in his step, and a weight behind his eyes. Mr. Winslow, Halverson called, voice flat and unreadable. Got a minute? Jerome nodded, his tone neutral. Sure. Around them, the range had fallen quiet, the kind of hush that only shows up when something bigger than noise is unfolding. A few lingered near the rental wall, pretending to browse. Others sat stiff in their chairs, watching like a confrontation might break out at any second. Halverson didn't raise his voice. You were Army, Fort Huachuca recon training. Jerome didn't flinch. That's right. Halverson scratched his chin, something clicking into place. Attached to JSOC, support detail in Iraq. Desert Storm 2. Jerome gave a slight nod. Impressive record, Halverson added. But you've been out a while. Didn't realize that disqualified me from renting a lane. Jerome said, calm but firm. Halverson gave a forced chuckle. Doesn't? Not if you shoot like that. Silence followed. Then, a shift. We don't usually let civilians run SEAL drills without clearance. You ran my name, Jerome replied. You handed me the rifle. Another pause. Halverson looked away, struggling to find the right tone. You're good? Maybe the best I've seen come through this place. Jerome said nothing. I want to offer you something, Halverson continued. Jerome raised a brow. Instructor role, part-time. We're building veteran-led programs. We could use someone like you. Jerome tilted his head, amused. You, offering me a job, Colonel? Yeah, Halverson said, a bit more upright. But Jerome let the silence stretch, unmoved, until the lobby door buzzed again. Appreciate the offer, he said finally. But I didn't come here to work. Halverson hesitated. If you ever change your mind, I came to shoot. Jerome interrupted, not with anger, just clarity, not to be evaluated. Then he turned and walked, calm as ever, back toward the range. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Everyone already heard what mattered. Halverson, standing there, still couldn't quite let go. You could do some real good here, Winslow. Teach these kids discipline. Jerome didn't even glance back. Discipline doesn't come from behind a desk. As he disappeared down the corridor, Gwen emerged, passing Halverson with a half smirk. Told you he wasn't just some walk-in. Halverson rubbed the back of his neck. I was wrong. Back at lane 6, Jerome returned to the booth. His name still glowed on the screen, highest score in the center's history. No one had dared reset it. He checked the M4, loaded a new mag, and pulled on his hearing protection. Behind him, Trey approached hesitantly. Mind if I watch? Some more. Jerome didn't look back. Sure. Just stay quiet. Trey stood behind the glass like a kid at a museum, eyes wide as Jerome dropped into rhythm. No hesitation. Tighter timing, a kind of shooting that wasn't about showing off but about trust between man and weapon. A whisper from the back. He's not just hitting targets, he's making a statement. By the time Jerome hit the final drills, the observation area felt more like a seminar than a range. Shooters paused mid-training to watch through the glass. On the leaderboard, names kept sliding down. Bennett, Ortiz, gone. At the top, Jay Winslow, 97.8% accuracy. He just passed Bennett on multi-target, one whispered, beat Ortiz by 5 seconds on precision. Gwen stood arms crossed, face unreadable but full of respect. Jerome never looked at the numbers, didn't care. He moved like water under pressure, fluid, focused, silent. Halverson, still at the wall, hadn't returned to his office. He's not even winded, Gwen said. He's pacing himself. Halverson muttered. That's harder. You trained with guys like that before? Gwen asked. Once Kandahar, Halverson replied. They don't say much. They don't need to. Inside the lane, Jerome shifted 2 offhand stance. 6 shots. No time to reset. Bang, bang. All hits. Green across the board. The monitor beeped. Another name fell. He was now ranked first in 4 categories. Gwen leaned closer. That last one, that was held by a 26-year-old out of Camp Pendleton. He's 63. He's not proving anything, Halverson said. He's remembering, Gwen whispered. Jerome loaded the final round. Dynamic movement, sharp corners, simulated entries. Most shooters couldn't clear it. He ran it clean. The score came in, 100% accuracy, 17.93 seconds, a record. Dead silence followed. Young instructors who had once scoffed now stood slack-jawed. Even Delgado, arms folded at the back, exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for 5 minutes. Jerome slung the rifle back, stepped off the line. The screen blinked. All-time high score, Pine Ridge Tactical Center. No applause, no ceremony. Just the soft whir of the HVAC system and the quiet steps of a man packing up. Trey walked over again. Sir, that was the cleanest run I've ever seen. Jerome gave a quiet smile. Appreciate that. I thought you weren't, ... Trey hesitated. I know what you assumed, Jerome said. I'm sorry. Assumptions are shortcuts, Jerome replied. They never get you to the truth. Trey nodded. You shoot. I try. Not like that. Jerome studied him. Come back tomorrow. I'll give you 2 drills. Change your grip forever. Really. You listen. I show you. You rush. I walk. Before Trey could reply, Gwen approached with a printed certificate. Top score. Advanced qualification. Jerome looked at it. Didn't reach. The words stared back at him like ghosts. And in a blink, he wasn't there anymore. The smell of gunpowder faded. The lights turned amber-orange. It was spring 1991. Basra. The air smelled of diesel and sweat. Gunfire in the distance. Jerome crouched behind a Humvee. No radio. 3 men down. Just him, a borrowed scope, and 7 mags. His hands weren't calm, they were trained. He took 6 shots, hit 5. After the 5th, the firefight ended. Later they handed him a commendation. He felt nothing. The ones they didn't save weren't on that paper. Back in the present, the range's hum returned. Gwen still held the certificate. Jerome nodded, took it gently, slipped it into his bag without looking. Across the room, Halverson stepped forward. Quieter now. That flashback, you went somewhere. Jerome said nothing. He didn't need to. I've had M2, Halverson said. Jerome nodded. They don't go away. No, Halverson replied. They just stop asking permission. A long pause. Not heavy, honest. I got 3 out that day, Jerome said softly. But not all of them. This helps, Halverson asked, gesturing to the rifle case. Some days, Jerome answered. Not all. They stood there a moment longer. 2 men whose wars never really ended. You ever think about teaching? Again, Halverson asked. Jerome looked at him. Not cold, just tired. I teach when someone wants to learn. Jerome had barely zipped his bag when Delgado's voice cut through the range, calling him out not to test, but to warn. Winslow, you got 5 more watching from upstairs. Jerome turned slowly toward the one-way glass, spotting 5 figures. Behind it, top instructors, a SWAT lead, and a retired Air Force captain. They weren't there to mock or spectate, they were there to learn. They saw something different in Jerome, something real. Delgado leaned in and told him, they just got taught. The digital leaderboard refreshed with his name stamped across the top, dominating every category. Trey stared at it in disbelief. This wasn't just high scores. Jerome had erased the standard and replaced it with his own. But when Trey asked what it meant, Jerome didn't talk about glory. Those names mean nothing unless you understand why you shoot, he said. Most train for speed. You need to shoot for purpose for the person next to you. The lesson hit deeper than any score. Even Halverson, now humbled, admitted he'd misjudged Jerome the moment he walked in. Jerome, with that calm steel in his voice, replied, the dangerous ones are the ones who never change. Upstairs, the instructors had already started rewriting their own playbooks. Gwen called out that everyone wanted Jerome's run saved. On the server they didn't want to forget what they saw. Halverson made the offer official. Full control. Rewrite the curriculum. Be the anchor of a new generation. But Jerome wasn't there to punch a clock. I'm not here to build a following, he said. I'm here to pass something down. He left the building quietly, but not without impact. Even Gwen whispered what everyone else was thinking. The best shooter they'd ever seen didn't even care to be noticed. Outside, Jerome moved toward his battered old truck like a man in no rush. Not tired, just deliberate. Halverson caught up, out of breath but earnest, handing him a folder full of teaching schedules and a badge already printed with Jerome's name. Jerome didn't commit, but didn't close the door either. I'll come back next week, he said, just to see who's serious. As he climbed into his truck, Trey appeared one last time, notebook in hand, eyes full of respect. Not desperation. I want to get better, he said. Not to look tough, to stop feeling small. Jerome nodded slowly. Fear wasn't weakness, it was a signal. The key was to use it. Most people lie about fear, Jerome said. But if you listen to it, it can guide you. Trey soaked in every word. When he asked about drills, Jerome was blunt. No shortcuts, no praise, just work. Bring a towel, he smirked. You'll need it. As Jerome pulled away, he gave one last piece of truth. Learn why you hold a weapon, because one day, that question will find you. And if you don't have an answer, someone else will. Pay for it. Inside the range, Gwen archived his run as a historical record. one instructor whispered. They'd make his footage mandatory training. Delgado saw Trey writing in silence, not chasing greatness, chasing growth. Some people walked in to impress a room. Jerome walked in and changed it without asking for applause. He wasn't there to be seen. He was there to remind them what it looks like when someone never forgets their purpose. And in doing so, he left behind something no leaderboard could: measure an example. So if you're watching, ask yourself, are you practicing to be praised, or preparing to carry responsibility? Because the ones who know the difference, you can hear it in every shot.